In a small town where nothing much ever happened, there lived a girl who had learned very early in life that some people are simply meant to be invisible. Her name was Lena, and she was 15 years old when this story begins. Lena was not the kind of girl people noticed. She was not pretty in the way that made boys turn their heads. She was not funny in the way that made crowds gather around her at lunch. She did not wear trendy clothes or carry the latest phone. She was just there, like a piece of furniture that everyone walked past without a second glance. Her family lived in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of town, in a building where the elevator never worked and the hallway always smelled like old cooking oil. Her father drove a delivery truck 6 days a week, leaving before sunrise and coming home after dark with tired eyes and aching bones. Her mother worked double shifts at a laundromat, folding other people's clothes while her own piled up at home. They were not poor in the way that made people feel sorry for them. They were poor in the way that made people simply forget they existed. Lena had one older brother who had dropped out of school to work at a warehouse. He was never home, and she had a younger sister, just 7 years old, who still believed that life was fair and that dreams came true if you wished hard enough. Lena did not have the heart to tell her otherwise. School was a place Lena went to because she had to, not because she wanted to. She sat in the back of every classroom. She never raised her hand. She never spoke unless a teacher called her name. And even then, her voice came out so soft that people often asked her to repeat herself. Most of the time, she just shook her head and said, "Never mind." The other students did not bully her. That would have required them to notice her first. Instead, they simply looked through her, as if she were made of glass. She ate lunch alone, walked home alone, and spent her evenings alone in the small room she shared with her little sister. But Lena had a secret, and it was the kind of secret that had slowly become the only thing keeping her heart from breaking. In the corner of their cramped living room, pushed against the wall and covered with a faded bedsheet, sat an old piano. It had belonged to her grandmother, a woman Lena barely remembered but often dreamed about. Her grandmother had passed away when Lena was just 6 years old. But the piano had stayed. For years, no one touched it. Her mother said it was too heavy to move and too expensive to tune. Her father said they should sell it. But somehow, they never did. It just sat there, collecting dust, like a forgotten promise. One night, when Lena was 9 years old, she could not sleep. Her parents were arguing in the kitchen about money, their voices sharp and tired. Her sister was crying softly in her bed, and Lena, feeling like the walls were closing in on her, got up and walked into the living room. She pulled the sheet off the piano. The wood was scratched and dull, and some of the keys were yellow with age. She sat down on the creaky bench and pressed one key. The sound that came out was slightly off, a little sad, but also strangely beautiful. Something inside her shifted that night. She did not know how to explain it, but it felt like the piano had been waiting for her. The next day, Lena went to the public library after school. She found books about music, about reading notes, about how pianos worked. She checked out as many as she could carry. At home, she hid them under her bed and studied them late at night with a flashlight. She learned that the piano was out of tune. She learned that proper lessons cost more money than her family made in a month. She learned that most pianists started training when they were 4 or 5 years old, with expensive teachers and hours of daily practice. But she also learned something else. She learned that music did not care where you came from. It did not care if you were rich or poor, popular or invisible. It only cared if you were willing to listen, to learn, and to try. So Lena taught herself. Every night, after her parents went to sleep and the apartment grew quiet, she would sneak into the living room. She would sit at that old piano and practice with the sound turned down as low as possible, pressing the keys gently so as not to wake anyone. She found free tutorials online, watching videos on an old tablet with a cracked screen that her brother had thrown away. She printed sheet music at the library, spending her lunch money on paper when she had to. She practiced scales until her fingers cramped. She played simple songs over and over again until they sounded right. Months passed, then years. By the time Lena was 12, she could play songs that made her own heart ache. By the time she was 14, she was teaching herself pieces that most students took years to master. And by the time she was 15, she could play things that would have made professional teachers stop and stare. But no one knew. At school, she was still the quiet girl in the back. At home, her parents were too tired to notice. Her brother was never around. Her little sister knew about the piano, but she was too young to understand how special it was. She just liked falling asleep to the soft melodies Lena played for her at night. Lena never told anyone because she did not think anyone would care. And part of her was afraid that if she showed people, they would laugh. They would say she was not good enough. They would take away the one thing that made her feel like she was more than invisible. So she kept her secret. She played alone in the dark, pouring her heart into music that no one else would ever hear. Sometimes, late at night, she would imagine what it would be like to play on a real stage, in front of a real audience. She would picture herself in a beautiful dress, sitting at a grand piano, under bright lights. She would imagine people clapping, crying, telling her that she was amazing. But then morning would come, and she would wake up to the same small apartment, the same worn-out clothes, the same life where no one expected anything from her. And she would remind herself that dreams like that were not meant for girls like her. Little did she know, everything was about to change. A single moment was coming that would pull her out of the shadows and force the whole world to see what she had been hiding all along. But that moment had not arrived yet. For now, Lena was still just a girl with a secret, playing music in the dark, waiting for something she did not even know she was waiting for. It was the middle of October, when Lena's quiet little world started to crack. The school year had been going the same way it always did. She went to class, kept her head down, and counted the hours until she could go home and sit at her piano. Nothing ever changed. Nothing ever surprised her. Until one afternoon, when everything did. Lena was sitting alone at her usual spot in the cafeteria, a corner table near the window where no one ever came. She was picking at a sandwich she had made that morning when someone dropped into the seat across from her. It was Priya. Priya was the closest thing Lena had to a friend. They had known each other since middle school, back when Priya was the new girl who did not know anyone, and Lena was the only one who smiled at her. Over the years, they had formed a quiet kind of friendship. They did not hang out much outside of school, but Priya always made a point to sit with Lena at lunch and talk to her in the hallways. Priya was the opposite of Lena in almost every way. She was loud, confident, and always had something to say. She wore bright colors and laughed at her own jokes. People liked her. Teachers liked her. She was the kind of person who walked into a room and made it feel more alive. But for some reason, she had always seen Lena, really seen her. And that meant more to Lena than she ever admitted. That afternoon, Priya had a strange look on her face. She was smiling, but it was the kind of smile that made Lena nervous. "So," Priya said, leaning forward with her elbows on the table. "I did something." Lena felt her stomach tighten. "What did you do?" "Okay, before you get mad, just hear me out." "Priya, what did you do?" Priya took a deep breath. "You know the winter talent show? The big one they do every year in the auditorium?" Lena nodded slowly. The talent show was a huge deal at their school. It was not just for students. Parents came. Teachers came. Even people from the community showed up. It was one of those events that everyone talked about for weeks. "Well," Priya continued. For a moment, Lena did not understand. The words did not make sense. She just stared at Priya, waiting for her to laugh and say she was joking. But Priya did not laugh. "You signed me up," Lena repeated, her voice flat. "For the piano. I signed you up to play piano." Lena's heart dropped into her stomach. Her hands went cold. She could feel the blood draining from her face. "How do you even know I play piano?" she whispered. Priya looked a little guilty now. "Remember last month when I came over to drop off that history project? You were in the bathroom, and I heard music coming from somewhere. I thought it was a video or something, but then I saw you through the crack in the door. You were playing, Lena, and it was not just playing. It was like nothing I have ever heard before." Lena felt like she could not breathe. Her secret, her one safe thing. Someone had seen it. "You should have told me," Priya said softly. You are incredible. Like, seriously incredible. And I know you would never sign yourself up. So I did it for you. I cannot do this, Lena said, shaking her head. Priya, I cannot get up in front of all those people. I have never played for anyone. Ever. I do not even know if I am actually good. I just play for myself. That is exactly why you need to do this, Priya said. You have been hiding for too long. People need to hear you. No. Lena stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. A few students nearby glanced over, and she felt her face burn. She lowered her voice. No. I am not doing it. You need to take my name off that list. Priya shook her head. I cannot. The deadline passed yesterday. You are already in. Lena wanted to scream. She wanted to cry. She wanted to disappear into the floor and never come back. Instead, she grabbed her bag and walked out of the cafeteria without another word. That night, she did not play the piano. She just sat on her bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling like her whole world was falling apart. She thought about all the times she had imagined playing for an audience. It had always been a fantasy, something far away and safe. But now, it was real. Now there was a date on a calendar and a list with her name on it, and she was terrified. The next few days were a blur. Priya tried to talk to her, but Lena avoided her. She could not even look at her without feeling a wave of panic. At night, she would sit at the piano and try to play, but her fingers felt stiff and wrong. The music that usually flowed so easily got stuck somewhere inside her chest. A week before the auditions, Lena was called to the drama room after school. The drama teacher, a tall woman with gray hair and kind eyes, wanted to hear everyone who had signed up. Lena thought about not going. She thought about pretending to be sick or hiding in the bathroom until it was over. But something stopped her. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the tiny part of her that wanted to know if she could really do this. So she went. The drama room was crowded with students. Some were warming up their voices. Others were stretching or practicing dance moves. Lena sat in the back corner, trying to make herself as small as possible. One by one, students were called up to perform. There were singers, dancers, comedians, and a kid who did magic tricks. Some were good, some were not. But all of them had one thing in common. They wanted to be seen. Lena did not want to be seen. She wanted to run. When her name was called, her legs felt like they were made of stone. She walked to the front of the room, sat down at the old upright piano in the corner, and placed her shaking hands on the keys. The room went quiet. She could feel everyone watching her. She played something simple. A short piece she had learned years ago. Her fingers trembled the whole time, and she made 2 mistakes that made her wince. But she got through it. When she finished, she looked up. The drama teacher was staring at her with wide eyes. A few students whispered to each other. That was lovely, the teacher said slowly. You are definitely in. Lena did not feel relieved. She felt sick. As she walked out of the room, she heard voices behind her. 2 girls from her English class were talking, not bothering to lower their voices. Wait, that was Lena? The quiet girl who never talks? I know, right? I did not even know she existed. This should be interesting. I bet she freezes on stage. They both laughed. Lena kept walking. She did not turn around. She did not say anything. She just swallowed the lump in her throat and kept moving. That night, she sat at her grandmother's piano for a long time without playing a single note. She thought about quitting. She thought about telling the teacher she had changed her mind. But then she thought about Priya's words. You have been hiding for too long. And she thought about her grandmother, the woman who had left this piano behind. The woman who, according to her mother, had always believed that music was meant to be shared, not hidden. Lena closed her eyes. She placed her hands on the keys, and she started to play. This time, she did not play something simple. She played the hardest piece she knew. She played it over and over again until her fingers ached and her back hurt, and the sun started to rise outside her window. She was still terrified. But somewhere deep inside her, Something else was growing. Something that felt a little bit like hope. She did not know what would happen at the talent show. She did not know if she would freeze or fail, or make a fool of herself in front of everyone. But for the first time in her life, she was going to try. And that, she realized, was the scariest thing of all. The week before the talent show was supposed to be exciting. For most of the students performing, it was. They walked through the hallways, talking about their costumes, their songs, their choreography. They practiced in groups during lunch and stayed late after school to rehearse on the stage. But for Lena, that week felt like walking toward the edge of a cliff. She barely slept, she barely ate. Every time she thought about standing on that stage in front of hundreds of people, her chest would tighten and her hands would start to shake. She tried to tell herself it would be okay. She tried to believe that maybe, just maybe, things would work out. But then came Thursday afternoon, and everything got worse. Lena was in the middle of her last class when a note arrived from the front office. The teacher read it and looked up at her. "Lena, you are wanted in the music room. You can pack up your things." A few students glanced at her. She felt her face go red as she gathered her books and walked out. The hallway was empty and quiet, and her footsteps echoed against the tile floors. When she reached the music room, she found two people waiting for her. One was the drama teacher who had run the auditions. The other was a man she had seen around school, but never spoken to. He was the head of the music department. A tall man with glasses and a serious face. He was known for being strict and for having very high standards. Students whispered that he had once played in a famous orchestra before becoming a teacher. Lena's stomach dropped the moment she saw him. "Come in," the drama teacher said kindly, waving her toward a chair. "We just wanted to talk to you about your performance." Lena sat down, gripping the straps of her backpack so tightly her knuckles turned white. The music teacher looked at her for a long moment. His eyes moved over her worn-out sneakers, her faded sweater, her messy ponytail. She could feel him making judgments, forming opinions, deciding who she was before she even opened her mouth. "So," he said finally, leaning back in his chair, "you are the piano girl." Lena nodded, not trusting her voice. "I was not at the auditions," he continued. "But I heard you played a short piece, something simple." "Yes," Lena managed to say. "I was nervous." He nodded slowly, like he had expected that answer. "I understand. Performing can be intimidating, especially for someone without formal training." Lena blinked. "How do you know I do not have formal training?" He smiled, but it was not a warm smile. It was the kind of smile adults give when they think they know better than you. "I asked around," he said. "You taught yourself, correct? On an old piano at home?" Lena felt something twist in her chest. She nodded again. "Look," he said, leaning forward now. "I am going to be honest with you. This talent show is a big deal. We have parents coming, school board members, donors, important people. It is not just a little school event. It reflects on all of us." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I am not saying you are not talented. I am sure you have worked very hard. But playing piano is not like singing or dancing. People can tell when someone is trained and when someone is not. And I would hate for you to get up on that stage and feel embarrassed." Lena's throat tightened. She could feel tears starting to form behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not in front of him." "What are you saying?" she asked quietly. He sighed, like he was doing her a favor. "I am saying that maybe you should play something easy. Something safe. A simple melody that everyone knows. That way, you will not feel too much pressure, and the audience will not expect too much." The drama teacher shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "We just want to set you up for success," she added gently, but Lena barely heard her. All she could hear was the music teacher's voice echoing in her head. "Something easy, something safe. Do not expect too much." He did not believe in her. He had looked at her clothes, her background, her lack of formal training, and he had decided she was not good enough. He had not even heard her play anything real. He had just assumed. Lena stood up slowly. Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to stay steady. "Thank you for your advice," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I will think about it." She walked out of the room before either of them could say another word. The hallway was still empty. Lena made it around the corner before her legs gave out. She leaned against the wall and slid down to the floor, hugging her knees to her chest. The tears she had been holding back finally came, hot and silent, streaming down her face. She had spent years teaching herself, years of late nights and aching fingers and sacrificing everything just to learn. And in one conversation, a man who had never even heard her play had told her she was not good enough. Maybe he was right. Maybe she had been fooling herself this whole time. Maybe she was just a poor girl with a broken piano and a stupid dream that was never going to come true. She sat there for a long time, crying in the empty hallway, feeling smaller than she had ever felt in her life. That night, Lena did not go to the piano. She went straight to her room and lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Her little sister tried to talk to her, but Lena pretended to be asleep. She did not have the energy to explain. She did not have the words. Hours passed. The apartment grew quiet. Her parents came home, ate dinner, and went to bed. Her sister fell asleep beside her, breathing softly. And still, Lena lay there, thinking. She thought about the music teacher's face, the way he had looked at her like she was nothing, the way he had dismissed her without even giving her a chance. She thought about all the people at school who had never noticed her, all the years she had spent being invisible. And then she thought about her grandmother, the woman she barely remembered but somehow still felt connected to, the woman who had left behind the piano that had changed Lena's life. Her mother had once told her a story about her grandmother. She said that when her grandmother was young, people had told her she would never amount to anything. She came from a poor family. She had no education. She had no opportunities. But she had refused to listen. She had worked and fought and struggled until she built a life for herself, and she had played the piano every single day until the day she died. Because it was the one thing that made her feel free. Lena sat up slowly in the dark. She got out of bed, careful not to wake her sister, and walked into the living room. The piano sat there like it always did, waiting for her. She sat down on the bench. She placed her hands on the keys, and for a moment, she just breathed. Then she made a decision. She was not going to play something easy. She was not going to play something safe. She was not going to shrink herself to make other people comfortable. She was going to play the hardest, most beautiful piece she knew. The one she had been practicing in secret for over a year. The one that made her cry every time she played it, because it felt like her whole soul was pouring out through her fingers. If she was going to fail, she was going to fail on her own terms. And if she was going to be seen, then people were going to see all of her. She started to play. The music filled the tiny apartment, soft at first, then building, swelling, becoming something bigger than the room could hold. She played with everything she had, every tear she had cried, every dream she had buried, every moment she had felt invisible. She played until her fingers hurt. She played until the sun started to rise. She played until she felt something shift inside her chest. It was not fear anymore. It was fire. And she was ready to let it burn. The day of the talent show arrived like a storm that had been building for weeks. Lena woke up that morning with her heart already pounding. She had barely slept the night before. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the auditorium filled with faces, all of them staring at her, waiting for her to fail. She got dressed slowly, putting on the only nice outfit she owned. It was a simple black dress her mother had bought her 2 years ago for a family funeral. It was a little faded now, and the hem was slightly uneven where her mother had tried to fix a tear. But it was the best she had. She looked at herself in the small bathroom mirror. Her hair was pulled back in a low ponytail. She had no makeup, no jewelry, nothing fancy. She looked exactly like what she was, a girl from a poor family who had no business standing on a stage in front of important people. For a moment, she thought about staying home. She could tell her mother she was sick. She could hide under her blanket and pretend this whole thing had never happened. But then she thought about the music teacher's face, the way he had looked at her, The way he had told her to play something easy, because he did not believe she could do anything more. She took a deep breath, grabbed her bag, and walked out the door. The school was buzzing with energy when she arrived. Students were everywhere, carrying costumes, running through last-minute rehearsals, laughing and shouting with excitement. The talent show was the biggest event of the year, and everyone wanted to be part of it. Lena moved through the crowd like a ghost. No one noticed her. No one stopped to wish her luck. She was invisible, just like always. She found Priya near the auditorium doors. Her friend's face lit up when she saw her. "You came," Priya said, pulling her into a tight hug. "I was so worried you would not show up." "I almost did not," Lena admitted. Priya pulled back and looked at her seriously. "Listen to me. I know you are scared. But you belong here. Okay? You belong on that stage. And when you play, everyone is going to see what I saw that day in your apartment. They are going to see the real you." Lena wanted to believe her. She really did. But the fear was so heavy it felt like it was crushing her chest. The performers were told to gather backstage an hour before the show. Lena found a quiet corner and sat down on the floor, hugging her knees. Around her, other students were warming up, chatting, taking selfies. A girl in a sparkly costume was practicing dance moves. A boy with a guitar was tuning his strings. Everyone seemed so confident, so sure of themselves. Lena had never felt more alone. The show started at 7. She could hear the auditorium filling up on the other side of the curtain, hundreds of voices blending together into a low roar. Parents, teachers, students, community members, all of them waiting to be entertained. One by one, the acts were called to the stage. A group of dancers went first, their music thumping through the speakers. Then came a singer, with a powerful voice that made the audience cheer. Then a comedy duo that had everyone laughing. Lena watched from the wings, her stomach twisted into knots. Each act that passed meant she was getting closer. Closer to the moment she had been dreading for weeks. She looked at the program someone had handed her earlier. Her name was last. The final act of the night. She did not know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. More acts came and went. A magic show, a hip-hop dance solo, a girl playing violin. Each one received applause, some more than others. The audience was warm and supportive, clapping for everyone. But Lena knew it would be different for her. She had heard the whispers. She had seen the looks. People were expecting her to fail. Some of them were probably looking forward to it. And then, finally, she heard her name. "Our final performer of the evening. Please welcome to the stage, Lena." There was a smattering of applause, polite but not enthusiastic. A few people whispered. She heard someone laugh softly. Lena stood up. Her legs felt like they were made of water. She walked toward the stage, each step feeling like it took an hour. The lights hit her as soon as she stepped out from behind the curtain. They were so bright, she could barely see the audience. But she could feel them. Hundreds of eyes, all fixed on her. The grand piano sat in the center of the stage, gleaming under the spotlight. It was the most beautiful instrument she had ever seen. Nothing like the old, scratched piano at home. She walked toward it slowly. Her hands were shaking. Her mouth was dry. She could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She sat down on the bench. The leather was cool against her legs. She placed her fingers on the keys and felt the smooth ivory beneath her fingertips. For a moment, everything stopped. She looked out at the audience. She still could not see their faces clearly, but she could feel their doubt, their curiosity, their expectation that she would freeze, stumble, prove them all right. She thought about the music teacher telling her to play something easy. She thought about all the years she had spent being invisible. She thought about her grandmother, playing piano in a small apartment just like hers, refusing to give up no matter what anyone said. And then she closed her eyes and began to play the first notes of Chopin's Ballade. No, one filled the auditorium. It was a piece that most pianists spent years mastering. A piece that told a story of struggle, heartbreak, and triumph. A piece that required not just skill, but soul. Lena played like she had never played before. Her fingers moved across the keys with a precision and passion that seemed impossible for someone her age. The music swelled and dipped, crashed and whispered. It was angry and sad and hopeful, all at once. It was everything she had ever felt, everything she had ever hidden, pouring out of her and into the air. The audience went silent. Not the polite silence of people waiting for something to end. The breathless silence of people who could not believe what they were hearing. Lena did not notice. She was lost in the music now. Lost in the world she had built for herself over 6 years of lonely nights and secret practice. She was not on a stage anymore. She was somewhere else entirely, somewhere the doubt and the fear and the judgment could not reach her. The piece built toward its climax, the notes coming faster and faster, her hands flying across the keyboard, and then, with one final, thundering chord, it was over. Silence. Lena opened her eyes. Her heart was racing. Her fingers were trembling. She did not know if she had done well or made a fool of herself. She could not read the room at all. And then, from somewhere in the back, someone started clapping. Then another person. Then another. And suddenly, the entire auditorium erupted. People were on their feet. They were cheering, shouting, some of them crying. The applause was so loud it seemed to shake the walls. It went on, wave after wave, filling the room with a sound Lena had never heard before. She stood up slowly, her legs wobbling beneath her. She looked out at the crowd and saw faces she recognized. Teachers with their mouths open. Students who had never looked at her twice, now staring at her like she was someone they had never seen before. She saw Priya in the front row, jumping up and down, tears streaming down her face, and she saw the music teacher, sitting in the third row, completely still. His face was pale. His eyes were wide. He looked like a man who had just realized he had made a terrible mistake. Lena did not smile. She did not wave. She just stood there, letting the sound wash over her, letting herself feel something she had never felt before. She had been invisible her whole life, but not anymore. Tonight, everyone saw her, and they would never forget what they heard. Lena did not remember walking off the stage. She did not remember the curtain closing behind her, or the sound of the applause finally fading. All she remembered was standing backstage, her whole body shaking, feeling like she had just woken up from a dream. Priya found her first. She came running from the audience, pushing past the other performers, and threw her arms around Lena so hard they both almost fell over. "You did it," Priya kept saying, over and over again. "You did it. I knew you could do it. I knew you could do it." Lena could not speak. She just held on to her friend and let the tears come. They were not sad tears. They were not happy tears either. They were something else entirely. Relief. Maybe. Or release. Like something she had been carrying for years had finally been set down. Other students started gathering around her. People who had never spoken to her before were suddenly shaking her hand, patting her on the back, telling her she was amazing. Teachers came backstage to congratulate her. Even the drama teacher, who had sat quietly while the music teacher told Lena to play something easy, came over with tears in her eyes and said she had never heard anything so beautiful in her life. Lena thanked them all politely, but she barely heard what they were saying. Everything felt distant, like it was happening to someone else. And then she saw him. The music teacher was standing near the edge of the crowd, hanging back like he was not sure if he should come closer. His face looked different now. The arrogance was gone. The certainty was gone. He just looked like a man who had made a mistake and did not know how to fix it. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then he walked over to her. The crowd around them grew quiet, watching. "I owe you an apology," he said. His voice was stiff, like the words were hard for him to say. "I made assumptions about you. I judged you before I even gave you a chance. And I was wrong." Lena looked at him. She thought about all the things she could say. She thought about how much his words had hurt her. How close she had come to giving up because of him. She thought about how easy it would be to make him feel small, the way he had made her feel small. But she did not want to do that. She was tired of carrying anger. She was tired of letting other people's opinions define her. "Thank you," she said simply. "I appreciate you saying that." He nodded, looking relieved and ashamed at the same time. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Priya squeezed her arm. "That was very mature of you," she whispered. Lena shrugged. "He does not matter anymore. None of them do." That night, after the auditorium emptied and the lights went dark, Lena walked home with her mother. Her father was still at work, and her little sister had fallen asleep in the audience and had to be carried home by a neighbor. But her mother had been there. She had seen everything. They walked in silence for a while, the cold night air biting at their faces. Then her mother spoke. "I did not know you could play like that," she said quietly. "All these years, I heard you practicing at night. I thought you were just fooling around. I never realized." She stopped walking and turned to face Lena. There were tears on her cheeks. "I am sorry," her mother said. "I should have paid more attention. I should have seen what you were doing. I should have helped you." Lena felt her own eyes fill with tears. "You were working, Mama. You were taking care of us. You did not have time. That is no excuse." Her mother pulled her into a hug, holding her tight. "You are so talented. Just like your grandmother. She would be so proud of you right now." "I'm on a C." They stood there on the sidewalk, holding each other, crying together under the streetlights. And for the first time in a long time, Lena did not feel invisible. She felt seen. She felt loved. She felt like she finally belonged somewhere. The next morning, everything changed. Someone in the audience had recorded her performance on their phone. They posted it online with a simple caption. "This girl taught herself to play piano. Watch what happens when she finally gets a chance to perform." Within hours, the video had thousands of views. By the end of the day, it had hundreds of thousands. By the end of the week, it had millions. Lena's phone, which usually sat silent in her pocket, started buzzing nonstop. Messages poured in from strangers all over the world. People telling her she had made them cry. People saying her story had inspired them to chase their own dreams. People asking how they could help her, support her, give her opportunities she had never even imagined. News stations reached out for interviews. Music blogs wrote articles about her. A famous pianist shared her video and called her one of the most naturally gifted young musicians he had ever seen. And then came the letter. It arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, in a thick envelope with a fancy logo on the front. Lena's hands trembled as she opened it. It was from a music conservatory, one of the best in the country. They had seen her video. They wanted to offer her a full scholarship, tuition, room and board, everything paid for. All she had to do was say yes. Lena read the letter 3 times before she believed it was real. She showed it to her parents that night at dinner. Her mother cried. Her father, who almost never showed emotion, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand and said he was proud of her. Her little sister did not fully understand what was happening, but she clapped her hands and said Lena was going to be famous. Lena did not care about being famous. She did not care about the views or the articles or the interviews. All she cared about was the music. All she had ever wanted was a chance to play, to learn, to grow into the musician she knew she could be. And now, finally, she had that chance. The night before she left for the conservatory, Lena sat down at her grandmother's piano one last time. The apartment was quiet. Her family was asleep. It was just her and the old instrument that had started everything. She ran her fingers over the scratched wood, the yellowed keys, the worn-out bench. This piano had been her teacher, her companion, her refuge. It had given her something no one else could. It had given her a voice. She played softly, not wanting to wake anyone. A simple melody. One of the first songs she had ever learned. It sounded different now. Richer. Fuller. Like the piano was saying goodbye. When she finished, she closed the lid gently and whispered 2 words. "Thank you." The next morning, she boarded a bus that would take her to a new city, a new school, a new life. She watched her old neighborhood disappear through the window. the cracked sidewalks and tired buildings fading into the distance. She did not know what the future held. She did not know if she would succeed or struggle or fall on her face. But she knew one thing for certain. She was not invisible anymore. She had found her voice, and she was never going to let anyone silence it again. Years later, when people asked her about that night at the talent show, she always said the same thing. They told me to play something easy. They told me not to expect too much. But I had spent my whole life being underestimated. And I decided that night that I was done letting other people decide what I was capable of. She would pause, a small smile on her face. Sometimes, the people who doubt you the most end up giving you the greatest gift. They give you something to prove. And once you prove it, no one can ever take that away from you. Lena's story spread far and wide. It inspired countless others who felt invisible, overlooked, dismissed. It reminded people that talent does not care about where you come from, how much money you have, or what anyone else thinks of you. All that matters is that you believe in yourself. And sometimes, that belief starts with a single note, played alone in the dark, on an old piano, that no one else thought was worth anything at all.